Good morning, everybody. It's great to see everybody here this morning. Um, I am Sean Smuckler. I'm an associate professor in land and food systems at the University of British Columbia. I'm also the director of the Center for Sustainable Food Systems and the chair of agriculture and environment. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this workshop as the chair of the BC Agricultural Climate Action Research Network. Our network was formed back in 2017 to foster research among researchers, government, and producers to catalyze effective research-backed climate solutions for BC producers. It was started with a generous donation from an anonymous donor. And our network quickly grew, and we now have a very robust group of people across the province. Our strategic objectives and steering committee members come from various institutions, as you can see here, from universities across the province, as well as government and producer groups. ACARN's first workshop in 2017 brought 20 enthusiastic people together, and today we have come a long way. We've hosted dozens of events and brought together hundreds of people online, and I'm really excited to say that this year's workshop registration is more than 500 people, 60% of which are new to our workshops. Over the last few years, BC has become the poster child for climate impacts. We've seen floods, droughts, deep freezes, and these have all had severe impacts on various producers across the province. I am also confident to say that we're the poster child of doing something about climate change. So this research network is a critical action to addressing some of the challenges that producers are facing. So I'd like to thank the BC Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Clean BC for supporting this workshop. Their financial support has allowed us to offer the workshop at no cost for participants, and we've made the session recordings available to the public. So I'd like to turn it over to the network's research manager, Shauna MacKinnon. You're on mute.
Yeah, of course. So thank you, Sean, for starting it off. Of course, I've got to start off. Someone had to do it, be on mute when I started talking, so I'm glad to check that off the list already. So welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many people joining us bright and early, first thing here. I'm going to start with a bit of a longer land acknowledgement, just because this is the first session at the beginning of our 3 mornings together. And I wanted to situate our workshop and acknowledge the Indigenous peoples who've lived on and cared for these lands where we live and grow our food. So I'm joining today from where I live in Vancouver on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. But I'm actually going to open the workshop by acknowledging not just the lands where I live on now, but where I grew up. And I'm a settler or uninvited guest of mixed European ancestry. And I grew up in the northern parts of British Columbia. And my most formative years were spent in Fort St. John, which is on Treaty 8 territories, the traditional lands of the Dene peoples, the Doig River First Nation, Blueberry River First Nation, and Halfway River First Nation. If you've ever had a chance to visit that area, or maybe have even lived there yourselves, you'll know that it is a gorgeous place, which is famous for its beautiful valleys and also the big skies. You'll also know that it's home to the very largest hydroelectric dams in the province and extensive oil and gas extraction. The Treaty 8, when it was signed in 1899, it was hailed as this agreement that was based on peace. And it was designed to promote the coexistence between peoples on the land base and sharing of resources, both renewable and non-renewable. And those treaty rights and responsibilities were not upheld. And growing up there, that was very apparent. And I have to say that for myself, growing up there, fishing and camping on those Treaty 8 lands was where I actually learned my first lessons about the value of learning from people who have a close connection to the land, and also the real need for stewardship and restoring right relationships with the land. And those are things that obviously have stuck with me to today, which is really why I'm here as the network manager for ACARN. And these themes of stewardship and relationships really run through all the work that ACARN does as a research network. And they're also going to run through our time together for the next 3 mornings. I also wanted to acknowledge that during other workshops and projects that ACARN has hosted and events we've run, we've had speakers and sessions that have focused on bringing in Indigenous ways of knowing into our sessions. And those really have been actually some of our best sessions and most engaging learning opportunities. Over the next few days, we don't have that as part of this workshop. And I just wanted to acknowledge that we have too few Indigenous researchers working here, and those researchers are easily overburdened with all the requests that they get for attending events and bringing those Indigenous perspectives into these types of conversations. And there's a even more severe capacity burden for Indigenous communities where they have so many crises that they're dealing with at once. So it can be really challenging to draw on that limited capacity to engage in research or to take time out to be part of a speaker in these types of workshops. So as a network, we are working on different ways of bringing Indigenous ways of knowing into the forefront, and also looking at supporting relationship building to build the research collaborations where Indigenous communities can lead. We also want to recognize that all of us need to be asking these questions about what it means to be in right relation to the land, and how can we all be better land stewards, and how do we all find ways to right the wrongs of the past. So I hope we can bring these lessons and questions into our time together over the next few days and think about not just how climate change is impacting agriculture, but about our relationships with the lands and the Indigenous peoples where we live and grow our food. So I just want to start there. And now I will go into, I know you've all seen the emails and hopefully have a very good sense of all we have in store for you over the next few days. But I wanted to just give a quick overview to that. And we can share with you in the chat a link to our webpage where you do see the full session descriptions, the speaker bios, and all that information. So as you probably are all very well aware, each day follows a theme. So today we're focusing on regional extension, and we'll be ending the day with a discussion around applied research needs. Tomorrow we're focusing on water. We're talking about drought adaptation, regulation, a panel on local water responses, and then ending that morning with a discussion session around research needs for water. And then on our third day together, we're focusing on soil health, and we'll be starting with our first 2 presentations focused on soil health field trials, then having a panel on cover cropping resources. And our final session will be a career development session where we have guests from the BC Institute of Agrologists, BC Centre for Agritech Innovation, and the BC Ministry of Agriculture and Food, talking about career and training opportunities in the sector. I want to say good morning to Michelle Koski, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister for the BC Ministry of Agriculture and Food. And she is joining us to provide some opening remarks before Angeli's presentation. It is not an overstatement to say that Michelle Koski is one of BC agriculture's most steadfast champions. She has been working for over 25 years in the agriculture and agri-food sectors in this province, and brings an extensive background in leadership and not-for-profit management, rural economic development, agricultural trade policy and export promotion, supply management, and regenerative agriculture and agri-tech policy and program development. So many of the different aspects of the BC agriculture industry. I also want to note that before becoming the ADM, Michelle was the past co-chair of the BC Minister's Advisory Council on Regenerative Agriculture and Agri-Tech. But maybe more importantly to me, she also served as a steering committee member for the BC Agricultural Climate Action Research Network. So it's so great to have you joining us this morning, Michelle, to kick things off for our 3 days of workshop together.
Thank you, Shauna. It's so great to be here and to see you, Shauna, and all of you from the ACARN network. I feel quite homesick to be back in this space. I feel like I don't get enough connection with people like you who are so dedicated to research and on-farm demonstration and just all the work you do. So I'm just thrilled to be here. And wow, that's a really nice introduction. So thank you so much, Shauna. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Just wanted to say a few opening remarks, mostly just to thank you for what you do and all the people who participate in ACARN. I don't need to tell you how diverse and wonderful, but also challenging the BC ag sector can be. And that, we're a small province in terms of not a small province, but, agriculture tends to not get some of the spotlight and resources that some of our other resource sectors do. So having this network approach and bringing people together from all over to kind of leverage all the brain power and innovation is just critical. So thank you for being here. I know I've been asked to speak about the new regional extension program, which I'm pretty excited about. It's basically, it builds on a lot of work that was done before under the old climate action initiatives and all the work that group did, which they did amazing work, and they have compiled so much great information. And part of me sometimes think we still need to kind of get in there and mine all that good work that was done over the past 10, 15 years and make sure that we use it for this new regional extension program, which is really focused on that on-farm adoption of beneficial management practices and to really support producers to make the best decisions they can. And, we're really looking at how can we help producers be more resilient, more sustainable, and really more profitable as well, because, we all know that it's great. We all want, sustainability. We want to meet our climate goals, but if producers can't make money in this business, we're going to be in big trouble with food security. So that's the focus of the program. And I think it also builds on the continuing kind of regional approach. I think the old work did that, but this continues that. So just making sure that producers from all across the region can bring their, knowledge, and they can bring all their experience with extension projects and make sure that we can meet our goals. So I understand you're going to be having quite a bit of presentations on the new regional model. So please be sure to give lots of feedback, lots of input. Want to make sure we're doing it right. Hoping to have an iterative process, are we doing it right? What can we learn? So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you come up with and what your feedback is. And just a final comment too, I see that you're going to be talking about the drought workshops, and it's just so, I think we're all so worried about it. And I know that my team has been working incredibly hard and certainly working with you folks to put together the workshops and to work in partnership with Walrus. There's going to, maybe be some difficult decisions and difficult conversations this year. We want to kind of have that whole of government approach so that industry knows how decisions are being made, what options and supports are available to them to help them make good business decisions and good environmental decisions. So it's going to be a tough summer. And so please, I encourage you to attend and to promote within your networks the decoding drought workshops and the technical workshops. So I see the thing there. Sorry about the acronyms. My apologies. I've got a head cold. I'm not quite in my right head. I don't even know what it stands for. Water and land use. It's the branch of government that does the permitting and makes the decisions about water. It's the part that used to be under forestry, and they've broken it away. So it's the folks that decide to issue the temporary orders, the ones that monitor all the rivers. So apologies for the acronym. Thank you, Ministry of Water, Land, and Resource Stewardship. Thanks, Angeli. So listen, I don't want to keep you too much longer other than to say I hope you have a wonderful session and workshop. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak. And please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. Shauna, Sean, I know you folks quite well. Please let me know how it goes, or if you need any supports or any of that kind of stuff. So thank you all again for the opportunity, and have a wonderful session.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Okay, and I'm just going to say, by way of introduction, so um, Angeli de la Rosa, she is the team lead for climate and environment programs at the BC Ministry of Agriculture and Food. She is responsible for the continuous improvement and design of key programs that many of you will be familiar with. The new regional extension program, which she's going to be presenting on today, as well as the environmental farm plan program and on-farm funding programs. So many of the very important programs that we are depending on and also that are helping address some of the climate environment issues on farm.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Angeli de la Rosa. My pronouns are she and her. I'm with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and I'm very happy to be here to talk to you about our regional extension program and hopefully get to hear your thoughts and discussion on it as well. I want to start by respectfully acknowledging and thanking the Lekwungen speaking peoples, today known as the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, on whose traditional territories I get to live and work as a settler. I'm calling in today from Victoria, British Columbia. So just flip through my slides here. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to do a bit of a look back on what we did this past year for the regional extension program. You know, we kind of did a bit of a soft launch of this program. So I'll let you know what we got up to, what kind of projects were rolled out, and all the conversations that we had with producers. I'll talk a bit about what we're doing to move forward in terms of identifying and developing extension projects for the next few years. And I'll give a few, I'm going to call them early project highlights for next year. I wish I had a more kind of concrete information about what to expect, but at this point, I'll give some hints and tidbits. That's on my agenda. There are maybe 4 takeaways that if nothing else, I'm hoping you'll take away from today. Is 1, expect to see more extension from us, from the ministry, across the province in your regions. If you're a producer, please expect to hear more from us about extension opportunities. 2, if you are interested in getting involved in attending extension or maybe kind of a deeper engagement, talk to your regional agrologist to connect. Number 3 is we do encourage everyone, especially producers, to sign up for our Agri-Service BC newsletter and social media so that you can hear more about upcoming extension events. And then maybe the 4th takeaway is, as Michelle said, you know, we hope that this is an iterative process for us in terms of rolling out regional extension. We probably aren't going to get it all right the first year. And so we'd love to hear your feedback. So please don't be shy in letting us know. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And Michelle already, I'll start with a bit of background. Michelle already spoke a little bit about this. What is this program, this regional extension program? Really, our objectives are to support and promote the on-farm adoption of beneficial management practices beneficial management practices, or BMPs, and really doing that through very producer-focused extension activities, you know, knowledge transfer, and education and outreach. And so really our goals are to develop and share knowledge to support producers with figuring out, okay, how, you know, which practices are right for me, for my context. Really the bigger picture is we're hoping to support the agricultural sector with adapting to climate change, being more resilient to these extreme events that we're seeing more and more, looking at how do we help with reducing greenhouse gas emissions through the sector, just increasing sustainability in general, and then of course, doing all that while maintaining or supporting economic viability or profitability. And we also heard a lot from producers that, yes, extension is great. Producers want to connect with each other and network and collaborate. So hoping that this program will also create those opportunities. In terms of kind of how much funding is available to support this program for the next year, we've got 1.5 million for this program. We had 1.5 million as well from the this previous year. Maybe a few more bits of information. As Michelle said, this program builds on the previous climate change adaptation program, or the work of the Climate Adaptation Initiative or Climate Action Initiative. But we're really broadening the focus for not just adaptation, but also we're looking at carbon sequestration, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and clean water, clean air, and really shifting towards what does more producer-focused, on-farm focused extension look like. So the kinds of projects that we're planning to deliver through this program include things like more on-farm demonstrations, field days, tailgate events. You can expect to see more knowledge transfer events in your region. So that could be anything from in-person workshops, but also digital or virtual workshops or webinars, that kind of thing. We're hoping to put out, more communications and digital resources. So that might mean things like fact sheets, newsletters, videos, or podcasts. And again, that networking piece, how do we create more opportunities for farmer to farmer networking and discussion? And we're also looking to support the development of better decision aid tools for producers to support that kind of decision making on farm, and just developing more knowledge around beneficial management practices program. And in terms of priority areas, again, it's quite broad. We're looking at absolutely climate adaptation, climate change, resilience, which would include things like soil health, nutrient management, how do we do a better job of managing our water supply, dealing with drought, on-farm waste management, greenhouse gas emissions reductions, practices that support biodiversity, so practices around maintaining our riparian areas, our grasslands, our natural habitats, and then, of course, reducing impacts of extreme weather events, wildfire, floods, extreme heat, extreme cold, etc. But how does this program actually work? So it might be a little bit different than some of our other programs. This is not an application-based program. So through this program, our ministry staff will gather input and involvement from producers in their regions across the province. And ministry staff, while they're gathering that input from producers, the goal is to really identify and lead extension projects in their regions. So again, it's not an application-based program, which is a little different than some of our other knowledge transfer programs, for example. So I've got my next slide has a few examples of projects that were, again, I mentioned that we had soft launched this program starting in April 2023. And I just have here a few kind of social media snippets of events that we are putting out or did put out. So, we're currently in the middle of offering agriculture water management workshops, and I'll share the link to those workshops in the chat after my presentation. We're offering those workshops again across the province in different cities. This one on the upper right here is actually an example of a bi-weekly newsletter that was kind of offered for potato growers in the Lower Mainland with a real focus on kind of sustainable integrated pest management. This one on the lower left was an example of a workshop on targeted grazing for fine fuel management. This was, I believe, in the Okanagan. We had a couple events around phosphorus management for dairy producers in the North Okanagan and in the Lower Mainland. And we do have, we had about 16 projects overall. I didn't want to just put up a full list of them, but I do have a link here. And again, I'll pop it in the chat if you're interested in seeing that list. So I just wanted to give you a sampling here of what was done this past year in terms of regional extension and some examples of what you might expect to see moving forward. So let me just flip to the next slide. What I'm going to talk about for the next few slides is, I mentioned that, again, this is not an application-based program, so our staff are actively speaking with producers to gauge, okay, what what extension is going to be right across the province. So I'll talk about the process that we did and what we heard as we went through those discussions this past year, from basically from April to December of last year. So this is the timeline that we embarked on. Starting in April, let me just make sure I can see my notes here. Starting in April, our regional staff started speaking to producers in the region about their priorities, what topics they'd like to see addressed through extension. So we started in April. Our staffs struck 7 committees. We're calling them regional extension committees, really forming those committees to give input on the environmental and climate concerns in their regions. Each committee, our staff invited members hoping to represent producers in those regions and really the breadth of the agricultural commodities that are being produced in that region. We also had the representatives from farmers institutes or industry organizations. So across those 7 regional committees, we had about 90 producers and representatives. And those committees met, each region was a bit different, but those committees met between 3 and 5 times between April and October to really discuss, okay, what are the challenges that we're seeing in our region in terms of sustainability, in terms of climate change? What are the knowledge gaps that we're seeing that could be addressed with extension? And really our goal was, in starting that process, was to get a good handle on what extension projects, what extension programming would be most suitable, and how do we make extension to be really representative of each region's geography, the types of production that are happening there, and the interests of producers in those areas. And I think I looked at the list of attendees, and I think I saw some of our committee members in attendance today. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for all your contributions in the last year. At the same time that we were speaking to producers through those committees, we also worked with ACARN, with Shauna and Asha at ACARN, to compile an inventory of past research and past extension and knowledge transfer that have been done previously. And I'm really glad that Michelle mentioned this in her remarks. We know that there's a lot out there with the previous climate change programming. A lot was developed. And so our purpose in doing this kind of review or inventory was, one, to remind ourselves of what's already been done across the province, to avoid duplicating things, and instead build on what's already been done. And in doing so, I think we've developed a bit of a library of resources that we can have available as we're working on our extension programming. So I've just got here as an example of what that inventory information looked like. So the information from the inventory was used to create these documents that we used as discussion guides to really support our discussion with our committees, as well as in some of the broader engagement that we did with producers later on. And I believe that the guidebooks are going to be shared on the webpage for today's event. Shauna, is that right? Yes, getting a thumbs up. So we are making those available. We know that they've been very useful for us, but we hope that they'll be helpful for producers, researchers, folks in agriculture as well. So check those out. When you get a chance, you can go to the webpage for today's event and they'll be linked there. And then the kind of last step on the engagement that we did was that we were building up to, by November of last year, we held 18 open houses and workshops to speak with producers across the province. These sessions were hosted by our ministry's regional agrologists, and really our goal was to get feedback on, we spoke to our committees over the year, but we wanted to really kind of confirm or validate the priorities that we were hearing about, as well as just hear from a broader selection of producers on the climate and environment related issues that they've been experiencing. So I've got a few pictures here. This is from the session that we did in Parksville on Vancouver Island. We had a great turnout of about 25 or 30 producers and representatives. And we did almost a full day workshop. And so really at those sessions, we focused on highlighting what are the issues, but also what are the potential solutions that can address those issues? What would that look like as extension? What are some of the barriers that producers are facing in terms of adopting beneficial management practices? And what are the gaps that they're facing, such as, is there a need for developing new knowledge, or is there a need for just access to existing knowledge? So had lots of discussions about that. Across those 18 sessions, we had a decent turnout. We had about 200 producers across the board. I think we would have loved to have had more producers turn up, but we were really happy with the quality of the discussions that we were having. So I just want to give you a bit of, I guess, a summary of what we heard from producers from those workshops and open houses. And I think this will give a bit of context for, this week's events. As a high level summary, the three of the top issues that we heard about from producers were water, soil, and climate related events. So I'll just quickly run through. I don't have a slide for these, but for water, we heard a lot from producers about things like, how do we increase awareness of future water shortages or drought? How do we increase awareness of that? Heard a lot of concerns around, the costs of building water storage or even upgrading existing water storage systems. We heard concerns around, how do we maintain water quality when it's being impacted by drought and increased demand? Heard a lot about, irrigation, interest in that, but also uncertainty about what's the right practice for me. How do I kind of hone in on what the right irrigation technique might be for my, their specific operations. Heard lots of interest on, expanding access to current water management technology like water sensors, flow meters, gravity fed systems, that kind of thing. So water was definitely a hot topic, and encourage everyone to attend tomorrow's session, which is really focused on water and drought. We heard a lot about soil as well. So heard a lot from producers about questions like, what are the best practices for tilling and managing fertility on farm? We heard kind of an interest in just learning more about soil health and how do you assess soil health on farm. Lots of interest around, more tools or more education around just the fundamentals of soil types, soil pH, how to do a soil test, etc. And then in terms of climate and extreme weather events, I mean, that's a really big umbrella topic. We heard a lot of concerns about flood preparedness, emergency planning in general, the challenging logistics of moving animals during evacuations, well-being of farmers, farm workers, and livestock, and the impacts of extreme heat, wind, smoke, etc. How do we do a better job as the ministry to make people more aware about funding opportunities related to extreme weather preparedness and climate change preparedness? Lots of interest on things like cooling technologies. Extreme heat in particular was one of the themes that came up quite a bit. So we are going to put out kind of a full what we heard report, hopefully by the end of March. And again, we'll make that available online. But again, that's just a high level summary of what we heard around water, soil, extreme heat, and that, well, what we heard report, we'll get into more detail. Okay. So what now? So we did all that engagement, we spoke to producers. What projects are actually going to come out of that engagement? And really the goal is, again, did a lot of engagement with producers, and how this program works is that our staff then kind of take what we heard, think about what makes sense for their region, and really formulate and develop extension for their regions. So where we're at now is we are developing those projects. And when we were planning this session, I was really hoping that we would have kind of more of a list of projects ready for you. We're not quite there yet. But what I do have is maybe I have a couple of examples of projects that I'm comfortable saying, you can expect to see something like this. So what's on my next slide here? So as I mentioned, we are currently rolling out these agricultural water management workshops. I'm going to say that you can expect to see more similar knowledge transfer events on water over the next year. This current series, they are still running. So again, producers in the audience, I really encourage you to, this is a QR code, but I'll also pop the link in the chat. This is a series, just as an example, looks at, how do we optimize irrigation systems? How do we explore options for on-farm water storage? It's delivered by certified irrigation designers, and really encouraging producers to attend this. So again, expect to see more similar events like on this topic, or possibly on a broader range of water-related topics for the next year. And then similarly, in terms of soil, you can expect to see more workshops, field days, and demonstrations about everything from probably the soil basics to beneficial management practices and how to build and support soil health. We really heard quite a bit of desire from producers to learn about soil and soil health when we spoke to them in the fall. So again, expect to hear more about that, details to follow. In terms of timeline of when you can expect to know more, I'm going to say the next round of projects will be confirmed within the next 4 to 8 weeks. It'll be kind of coming in waves. And my next slide is going to be, okay, so those projects are coming. How are you going to hear about them? So again, we really encourage you to sign up for our agri-service e-newsletter or e-bulletin that goes out at least once a month. We also have a Facebook, social media to promote those upcoming field days, workshops, and extension events. And if your interest is piqued and you're thinking, okay, I'd like to attend an event, but I also maybe want to host a demonstration on my farm, or I'd like to be involved in projects, connect with your regional agrologist to find out what projects are going to be happening in your region. Let us know what you're interested in, what you want to be involved in. And maybe I'll do a plug as well that if you're a consulting agrologist, I think there's a number of PAGs in attendance, and you don't already work with us, I encourage you to regularly check BC Bid, because that's where we'll be posting any RFPs or upcoming contracts where we're looking for support from consultants to deliver these projects. And we'll also be promoting opportunities, I think, through BC Institute of Agrologists. So really want to hear from you. If you're not sure who your regional agrologist is, please reach out to us on AgriService, and we'd be very happy to connect you with the folks in your region. And I think my last slide is just acknowledgements, just a thanks to support from our federal partners, as well as to acknowledge the funding coming from Clean BC. So Shauna, that's what I had for slides. And I thought maybe if we had time, we can, if there's questions, discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Angeli, for taking us through the steps that you guys have been going through in terms of consultation and development for the new regional extension program, highlighting some of the continuity there. This is your time for questions. If you can put your questions into the Q&A box, that's just a little easier for us to manage. I do see one that just went into the chat, and we can take that there. So this is your time for Q&A. We've got lots of time. I also just wanted to give a shout out to Asha Wareham, who's part of the ACARN team, who's been plugging all the links in there as we go along. And just so everyone knows, we will be doing sort of like a roundup email following today's sessions that will have all of those links in one place, as well as, for example, those links to where you can connect to AgriService BC. So don't feel like you need to track everything. We'll make sure we have it all wrapped up for you at the end of the day. So Angeli, I'm going to start with the first questions that we have here, and I'm going to start with maybe an easy one, which is where can we find out about who was on the regional committees?
Good question. Trying to think. We don't have the list posted online publicly, but I don't think that I'm just trying to think around kind of privacy concerns. But you can definitely reach out to us if you are interested in who was on the committee for your region. There was about 10 to 20, I guess, individuals invited to be part in each region. It depends on the region, but we also recognize that we were trying to balance, trying to be representative, but also keeping the numbers manageable. So we recognize that not everyone was able to be invited. And I'm not 100% sure. We may publish the list of members on the What We Heard report that I mentioned. I will have to confirm that. But again, you're welcome to reach out to me if you are, or your regional agrologist, if you would like to know who was part of those committees. Thanks.
Thanks, Angeli. So I'm going to ask a question that came through in the chat. And so the context is that from a producer perspective, it's not clear what amount of time or resources regional agrologists have dedicated to individualized support for farmers. So the questions are really around what is the long-term timeline for extension programming? Is this a pilot? Is this going to be something that's going to be long-term that you're looking at building out? And sort of like a side question to that is if there will be annual opportunities for producer participation in program design. Yes, great question. I think the easier answer is yes, there will be ongoing opportunities for engagement. Right now, we're really focused on formulating the project. So I think the next question for us is, okay, we had these committees last year. What does it look like moving forward? Is it the same people? Are we doing yearly workshops, or do we kind of shift the model? So I don't have all the answers yet on that, but yes, there will be ongoing opportunities. So if you are interested in, potentially joining a committee or a project committee or something, please again reach out to us and let us know what you're thinking. In terms of the intentions for this program, I can give an answer to that. I'm just wondering if there is anyone else in the. Never mind. So this is, it's funded through the Sustainable Canadian Agriculture Partnership Program, which is, I popped in here. And so that's a 5-year agreement between federal, provincial, and territorial governments. So, that 1.5 million for next year that I mentioned, we have that Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership funding between now and 2028, which is very similar to how the Climate Action Initiative funding was operating. It was also funded by the previous round. So beyond that 5 years, I don't know what it will look like. I hope it will continue, but I'm not 100% sure at this stage. So. Okay, so a couple more questions just around the program design for this stage. So is there one-to-one farmer extension? Will that be part of the program, or is it really delivered through the regional agrologists as sort of giving broader advisory services? Okay. So through this program, we're really looking at, I guess you can call it kind of group extension. So that would be those on-farm demonstrations, field days, workshops, webinars, as well as kind of digital extension. So that would be the fact sheets, the newsletters. For the one-on-one right now, what I can say is we do have our environmental farm plan program. And we'll be looking at, okay, how do we better integrate that programming, the EFP program, which for folks who are maybe not as familiar, that EFP program has been running for, let me say, over a decade. And
It's a free, voluntary, and confidential program where a planning advisor can come to your farm and kind of work with you on a agri-environmental risk assessment. So like a workbook is what that actually looks like. And it is very much focused on environmental sustainability as well. And that's a one-on-one, it takes a couple hours. And by completing your farm plan, it also makes you eligible to apply for on-farm funding for some of the any improvements that were identified through your farm plan, your completed farm plan. So I think expect to maybe see us trying to integrate, okay, we're offering extension services through workshops and field days. How does that integrate with that one-on-one services that's being offered through the EFP program?
Yeah, and I think you sort of answered one of the other questions that came up, which I think is a great sort of umbrella question to kind of dig into the details here. So first, the person who brought up the question just want to say thank you for bringing back the E word, which definitely I hear you on that comment. There was a period of time, quite a long period of time, I believe, where extension was a word that the Ministry of Agriculture was not willing to use. So I think we could all just applaud the fact that it's back into the lexicon and something that has been prioritized. But that does bring up the question that this person is asking around how are you defining extension? And their comment is that in the old days, extension was technology transfer. And now it does sound like, just from what you're describing, that extension is more about including sort of that broader spectrum of government programs, things like EFP or the IF cost share programs, business risk management, that kind of thing. So when the ministry is thinking about this regional extension program, what's fitting under that umbrella?
What a question. Okay. Let me see if I can wrap my head around it. I think when we are talking about regional extension, I think we're seeing it as part of a broader umbrella of services. And so I think that those on-farm funding programs, so we do have our BMP program, our extreme weather preparedness program, for example, where a producer can get cost-shared funding for infrastructure upgrades to their operation. I'm not necessarily seeing that as extension, but it's all part of kind of a spectrum of, you might be attending as a producer, you might be attending a workshop or a field day and you're learning about practices that then you need additional support to implement them on your farm. And probably you'll need financial support to implement them on your farm. Or for example, you maybe spoke to your EFP planning advisor and had a really good conversation. So to me, the EFP planning conversation is more, to me, that's more under the umbrella of extension, although that's not within the umbrella of this regional extension program per se. But those cost share programs are really kind of part of that, I guess a spectrum or like a continuum of support. We can provide you with information, provide you with that opportunity to connect with other producers through these field days, demonstrations, learning from each other, provide you with opportunities to connect with a one-on-one advisor through EFP, but to actually enable you to actually support you to make the changes with financial support, we have this other suite of programs. So I'm not sure if that fully answers the question. For us as well, this regional extension program is a shift in how we are doing our work. And one thing we're recognizing is there is a lot of extension already happening outside of the ministry. Let's say through the BC Living Lab, for example, through IIF, we know that they're also doing lots of research, on-farm research, and they'll be kind of conducting knowledge transfer as part of those projects. So for us, yes, we want to be able to offer more extension through the ministry, but what is also our role in coordinating the other extension that's happening out there? And so, yeah, it's a bit of a shift for us to be a bit of this like coordinating hub for, yes, we can do it. We can offer our own extension. We have that 1.5 million to support that, but how do we also connect and make sure that we're all talking to each other, that maybe we're coordinating, and we don't want to overwhelm producers as well with too much information. So how do we do a better job of that? So I don't have an answer of how that will look like. I think it's something we're figuring out. So I don't know if that answers all the questions, Shauna, but
yeah, I think it
yeah.
gives people a sense of where you're, where the framing is. We do have a few more questions and they're getting upvotes, so I want to make sure we have time for them. So there's a question around the size of farms that are the target of this work. And so yeah, a lot of the efforts do seem to be focused around larger farms. And as you know, for some programs, it's easier for larger farms to access them. Whereas, there is definitely a body of research out there that's showing that small farms are really what can feed people and is a really important part of food resiliency and climate resiliency. So could you just speak to how smaller farms can fit into this extension program and what kind of supports are available for them?
Good question. I think in the context of this program in particular, we haven't really laid out a criteria for, you have to have a certain acreage or I don't know, like revenue level per annual revenue in order to participate or attend. I think we're recognizing as well, like we're framing it as a regional extension program. We're realizing that each region is quite unique and different. And so I think we saw that come out. I wasn't able to attend all those workshops, the 18 workshops and open houses that I mentioned in November. I went to the one on the island. We had, I think the folks who we were hearing from was, I think if I had gone to some of the events in the other regions, you would have seen kind of the people who were attending were representative of the types of farms in the region. So I'm not sure if that's a direct answer to that question, but I think we really want this program to be regionally specific. And so, recognizing on the island, there are lots of smaller farms. And so maybe you can expect to see the extension will be looking to serve all sorts of farms. But again, we haven't set kind of a threshold or criteria for this program. I have heard that question come up in the context of some of our other programs, like our funding programs, where we're hearing questions around how do we lower the barriers to applying for funding for different sorts of farms. And so we're definitely open to hearing your feedback on, what is the specific issue for you. And we can work with our kind of partners in delivering those programs on how do we lower the barriers, because we do recognize smaller doesn't necessarily mean that it's less productive, and certainly the climate impacts are still real. So definitely open to hearing feedback from folks on, especially for those funding programs.
Yeah, and there's a question following up directly on that, which is about having the environmental farm plan as a prerequisite for funding. And the question is around if there's extra investment happening to speed up that process. For this person who's posing the question, but a lot of people have upvoted it, that in their region, it takes an incredibly long time to access an EFP planning advisor. And there's long wait times. So this can be a big barrier, especially for young or newer entrants. So is that investment happening at the same time so that that barrier can be removed if EFP is the kind of the gates to get through for cost share programming?
Yeah, good question. We are actually right after this session, I'm at 10 o'clock, we're having a kickoff meeting for a kind of a program design project for the EFP. So we're going to be looking at how do we, again, lower those barriers? What are the different options to to make that program more accessible. So yes, we kind of have heard that feedback. I don't have any specific answers for you or details for you now on what, if there's investment, what it looks like. But definitely we'll be looking at how do we open up that programming to more individuals. I think we are recognizing that it's a popular program, it's a well-known and respected program, and we want to be able to kind of expand the reach of it. But I don't have any specific details at this time on what that would look like.
Okay, yeah, and definitely that's something that could go into your next meeting as something that definitely is a priority that we've been hearing. Another highly upvoted question here, and you acknowledge that a lot of extension has been delivered by organizations outside of the ministry, over the many years. So the question is specifically around whether there will still be funding, government funding for extension delivery, through knowledge transfer events or other extension programs that can go to outside agricultural organizations, or is the vision here that the ministry itself will be delivering all of the extension through regional agrologists?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So two things come to mind. One is we continue to have our KTTP program, our Knowledge and Technology Transfer Program, which is a funding opportunity for organizations to apply for funding for speakers, professional development, knowledge transfer events. It actually, I believe it closes on Thursday for this coming intake. And then we're looking at hopefully having another intake in the fall. So that program continues to be available. And then I think we recognize that, yes, the ministry is, we're the ones engaging with producers, talking to them about their needs. But we recognize that I think for some projects, we might not have the in-house capacity to deliver those projects, or it may make a lot of sense, depending on the project, to partner with an organization. So there's definitely, I think I wouldn't say that whatever is upcoming for next year in terms of extension is going to be, the regional agrologists are just going to do it all. I just think that one, that's a lot for the regional agrologists to take on, and two, there are a lot of projects where it will make more sense to partner with organizations. So without the specific list of projects in front of me, I can't really get into specifics. And I think that's probably what I want to say about that question.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do have one more question in the Q&A, and I'm going to also just share a comment that came through in the chat around someone who is currently working as an EFP program planning advisor. Just to say that one-to-one aspect of that program is very valuable and really provides that opportunity for talking about these broader extension goals and discussing the specifics to farmers, their farm-specific cases and how they could be bringing in these different beneficial management practices. So those nuances can really be addressed at that level through the EFP program. So important piece of the overall extension picture. So there's a couple of times where you mentioned that there is an opportunity to give feedback on the barriers to accessing these programs and potentially the design of the programs. And so the question is, where does that feedback go? Do people reach out to their regional agrologists? Who do they reach out to? Where do they go?
Great question. So I guess first, thanks for the comment on EFP. Totally agree. And I don't see regional extension as kind of replacing that. It has to work together. In terms of the feedback, a few different ways. So do encourage you to connect with your regional agrologist or to find out who that is. And if you're not sure, contact us at AgriService. You are also welcome to email AgriService directly with your comments that will make its way to the right person. And the other, I guess, opportunity that's open right now to provide feedback is, I guess when this is done, I'll pop into the chat a link to our program webpage, and on there we have a Survey Monkey that's open. And so that if you would prefer to give feedback kind of anonymously through that survey, we opened that in November, and we decided, we're just not going to close it. We'll just leave it open so that we'll have this ongoing opportunity for anonymous feedback. So yes, so definitely connect with your regional agrologist if you're open and comfortable with that, or connect with us on AgriService. And we have this Survey Monkey that's available if you'd like to provide feedback that way as well. And I'll make sure that I post that in the chat after this. Let me just think if there's any other opportunities. Yeah, no, I think those are the three main ways that we would encourage folks to reach out.
Great, thank you for that. And while you were chatting, Nicole Pressey from the Ministry of Agriculture just shared a link to the regional agrologist
Awesome.
directory, and then the general contact information. So we just shared that in the chat. And we'll also share that survey link in the chat as well. So I think we're gonna wrap here. Thank you so much, Angeli, for your presentation, for answering the questions. Obviously, there is so much interest in this program, and yeah, we're all happy that the E word is back, and you can tell that people are really keen to figure out, okay, so what does this mean? How do we work with this? And yeah, very thankful for your openness, for answering the questions, and we're all excited to see where this goes, and yeah, just so happy to see this prioritized. It's really important.